Greetings! In the name of Ingayami and Yasantiwa, all that is good and great, all that is blessed and beautiful, all that is creative and conscious, and all that is positive and possible. May all your blessings be infinite like the night stars, and all good things be never ending. Hotep, I am Adis Olabayabekoli, your host to Mind Vibe. Thoughts from a Curious Mind, a bi-monthly podcast series exploring and examining social phenomena then and now. Now, in this episode of Mind Vibe, I'm going to be dealing with Karma Comes to Rudy, the fall of quote-unquote America's mayor. But before we go there, hit that like button, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Now, Karma Comes to Rudy, the fall of quote-unquote America's mayor. Quote-unquote, karma is not just about the troubles, but also about surmounting them. Rick Springfield. Maligning someone on GP is not something that someone should do, even if they have a plausible reason to do so. But to malign someone without cause, only to advance one's narrative, to advance one's activity, especially when the activity is illegal, that is something else. Yet, actions do have consequences, particularly when demonization is at the behest of somebody's character, especially when you are in position of power and your name carries a lot of weight. But karma, as they say, can be a bitch. When you're perpetrating evil and you believe the whole apparatus is at your fingertips, you feel not only invincible, but powerful, to the point that Ruby Freeman and her daughter Shay Moss would not dare challenge. Yet, Rudy Giuliani, the so-called quote-unquote people's mayor, will soon find out his need to not having to take the mother and daughter's defamation suit seriously now will cost a great sum of money, besides paying the legal fees of mother and daughter. Although the economic security that Ruby and Shay will receive, though substantial, can never regain the loss they both had enduring their harassments and loss of mental stability by rich and powerful people and other MAGA hounds who felt it their duty to create havoc to these beautiful human beings. You know? Now, I don't, I like, when someone who was defamed, or someone who was wronged and hurt, that either criminally or civil, that they get, payment back. Either they lock up the person or they have to pay out a huge amount of money. Now with somebody like Fox D News, the Fox, I don't care about them paying, $700 something $1 million. They got it. But somebody like Shay Moss and her mother, Ruby Freeman, they don't have that. And so for them to finally get vindication through this civil suit is, it's just a nice thing to do. But it can never regain what they had, what their life was before the MAGA hounds and Orange Man and Rudy sat down there and maligned their name and took it through the mud. They can never get that back. The kind of harassment that they had to deal with. You know, having to leave their home because the threat of their lives. Because they were just doing their civic duty. White males have cloaked themselves in the cloak of invincibility, that they neither have to abide by the law or refrain from making someone's life a living hell, simply because of their privilege and status. They believe not necessarily in their merit, but the idea of ultimate control. Yet, one now has to imagine, as it usually does, what and how poor Rudy is feeling. Because his was a privilege and a position that shouldn't have been challenged. In fact, it never occurred to him that these two black working class women would dare stand up to him, the people's quote unquote mayor. Yet, Ruby Freeman and her daughter Shay Moss have come to be the symbol of what the Europeans' medieval theatrical production known as everyman. They represent truth to power, or better yet, a David and Goliath story. Because Ruby Freeman was approached by a sister who was not a sister to convince her to say, yeah, well, she lied and she did this. And Ruby's like, no, I can't do that. I've been a poll worker, almost my entire life. I'm not going to say just because, number 45 decided that, he needed to win Georgia, but they're going to blame me and my daughter. But no, I ain't going there. Right? And this was a sister that was doing that dirty work. And yet, Ruby Freeman stood tall. And she stood her ground. She was not going to be, pushed and to do something illegal. She upheld not only her civic duty, but the Constitution of this country. Rudy, like many of his privileged fellow travelers, are now finding out that yes, they too will have to pay. That yes, there are consequences for their action. And that everyone deserves respect. Even ordinary people like two volunteer poll workers who were just doing their job that should have been free of harassment. Though I can rejoice, and I do, over Rudy having to pay retribution, there are, however, many in the MAGA frenzy crowd who, unlike Rudy, may not be privileged, but are just as dangerous, since they may be part of the thousands who are everyday people with no privileged status, who can ride under the radar to continue to be a threat to these two citizens of Georgia and of America. These are the people that, they don't have the money. They're not cloaked in privilege. Just the same as Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. They're everyday people. But because they have joined in this MAGA hate frenzy, they are not seen. And they're the people who can stand outside of Ruby Freeman's house. They're the ones who can call Ruby and start threatening them. They're the ones who, the FBI and the CIA, they don't notice them. And that's the danger, right? They're the lone wolves that can easily maneuver throughout society. They can be part of the crowd and not get noticed. Yes, two poll workers, two black women doing their job, which, by the way, is a volunteer job. They were performing their civic duty, of which we are taught from grammar school, whose lives are now turned upside down because of a privileged white man who could not accept defeat, who sent his other white privileged man as his henchman to intimidate, excoriate, and malign, are now finally getting their day in court. And all the MAGA freaks that come out with their vampire teeth and banshee roar, justice is now raining down on these privileged white men. And as we all have been taught, this time justice is truly being blind. This is one of those times where those two workers have proven, yes, they can have justice. They can have their day in court. They can be a part of a system that believes that no one is below the law, no one is above the law. And Rudy and Orange Man and all of those people who were involved in that alleged criminal activity, they will also see their day in court. And they will have to face the music. Now, whether they have to be pay out, a whole lot of money as Orange Man is now have to do with Jean Carroll, the woman who accused him of raping her, right? She is now have to get paid by this huge big loaf who was once, quote unquote, the president. All his power, all his privilege, all his money, all of their influence, right? All of them who were involved in this, as Fonnie Willis has decreed, the RICO case, racketeering. All of these people now had to go through the Fulton County Jail to get their mugshot and their number. All of them. And Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss will now finally get some closure, perhaps some peace, along with Little Green. And that will go a long way to at least ease their pain of what they've had to go through these past couple of years. And that I tip my hat to, because again, if we are going to be a country that is climbing towards a utopia society, we must always be a country of laws, and all people must abide by the law. And this is at all by Bank College saying, may we all strive to bend the arc of justice towards humanity and believe that peace and love can be achieved. Madase P.